This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. If you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
Welcome to this Where Did the Road Go Fringe News Edition show. I'm here with Cherylee Black.
Hi, Soraya.
And Joshua Cutchin.
Back again.
And this time, far more sober than last time.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Good point. Good point. There's no Sasquatch roars yet.
Oh, yeah. No.
And just to be sure, are we recording?
We are recording this time.
That's the big question.
I feel the last one came out remarkably good, considering we did an hour of it without recording.
Yeah, I'm sort of hoping that if I say something stupid, that your recorder will malfunction at that point.
Let's hope not, because I may not notice. But all right, let's cover a few of these news articles. And the first one is Cherylee's gift to Josh.
Yes.
Fairies continue to be seen in the modern day, according to this new research. This is on the Daily Grail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Fairy Investigation Society, back a couple of months ago, released this, and I was aware that they were compiling, but I had no idea of the breadth of it. It's a 400-page long fairy census, detailing recording sightings between 2014 and 2017, and it is huge. And I think it's the best bit of fairy scholarship that we've seen in a long time, and it's really interesting because it shows the how this phenomenon is continuing into the extreme present, extremely close to our current day. And there have been some interesting data that's sort of starting to emerge on it from just sort of looking at it already. I posted onto my Twitter page a map of the UK. Ireland was omitted for some reason, but a map of the UK that incorporates a lot of the data from this particular study into sort of revealing which parts of the UK have the most recent sightings into the modern era. So anybody can pop on over to my Twitter page and see that. But this particular study was focused on, obviously, the British Isles, then North America, the rest of Europe, sort of Oceania, and then the rest of the world. Some of them are really weird. Some of them are really out there. Some of them are a lot more subtle, but it's really interesting to me. I hope to, once I get my book out the door, spend some more time sitting down with this, 500 or so accounts and just sort of looking through them and looking for the inevitable connections that you'll see between that and the UFO phenomena, because I'm convinced at this point that they're part and parcel of the same thing. Again, not saying that one is the other, not saying that UFOs are fairies or fairies are UFOs,
right.
But the alien phenomena, but saying that there's some sort of shared connection there. So I really want to get into it. I haven't had a chance to get into it. I did a quick skim to see if anything in it was really germane to what I was writing about. But I want to really dig into that. So yeah, I recommend anybody to take a look at it. It's freely available online. I, of course, downloaded it and saved it to a flash drive and backed it up because it's really in my wheelhouse. But I think it's really it's fascinating. It really is.
So what you're saying is that there's a connection between UFOs and fairy lore?
I've never said that. I'll never go on the record saying that. Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's interesting that they're still being interpreted as fairies today.
Yeah, I think it's. I wouldn't doubt it if it has something to do with the sort of co-creative idea that Greg Bishop likes to talk about. I honestly think that a lot of even just straight up UFO encounters, if we had people who entertain the idea that fairies could possibly have some sort of objective reality, um, then perhaps people would actually, see fairies or interpret what they see as fairies in these UFO encounters. But instead,
Yeah.
we're led to believe that the idea of extraterrestrial life is more believable than the idea of there being some sort of spirit ecosystem that we interact with. Not saying here nor there. Not saying here nor there in terms of which is more likely, but I think that it's really our cultural perceptions that allow us that cause us to interpret these things one way or another. I and again, that goes both ways. I think that if someone from 1730 Cornwall had encountered extraterrestrials in the regular abduction experience, they would have interpreted it as fairies. And I think that if we if we run into something that is probably more like fairy phenomena today in 2018, we're much more likely to jump to the ET conclusion.
Yeah, and I think it's very obvious. There were some cases in I think it was your first book, where it was almost a game of UFO or fairy, where you would tell the story and not relate when it happened or what the interpretation of it was, and it's hard to tell sometimes whether or not it's a UFO narrative or a fairy narrative because they're so similar. And when you take that cultural bias out, it really changes it.
Yeah, the new book is going to be chock full of that sort of thing. If people like the pointing out the connective tissue between these two things, if people like seeing that and reading about that, then the new book's going to be for them. That's for sure. And it's just I think it's something I don't think that I think that a lot of people shut down when they hear the term fairy, and it really upsets me because it sounds goofy. I agree, but I think it's really a matter of education in terms of how much you realize it's goofy. Once you realize that that it's not this fairy, this fairy tale storybook thing,
yeah,
and that it really is just referring to something a lot darker and something that's embedded into Jungian archetypes and sort of the foundational folklore of our shared collective history, especially for people with European backgrounds and other indigenous cultures as well. I think people sort of come around to it. It's just a matter of getting them to keep an open mind for that 15 minutes while you explain that to them.
right.
I had some recent interviews where I tried talking about this stuff, and people were like, "Well, this is just silly. There's no reason for us to talk about this sort of thing. It's just silly." And it's like, no, just please, just bear with me for a moment. Yeah, I honestly don't think, if you look at the consistency of the fairy folk motif worldwide, and if you are open to the idea of ghosts or spirits or something, then I think that it has just as much validity as the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And that's just sort of where I am right now.
Fair enough. I was going to say something else about it. Oh, yeah, the idea of fairy kind of, you say, oh, fairy, and people think Tinkerbell. But that's not what the fairy faith was about. That's just what it's been turned into by pop culture.
Right. Yeah, it's just sort of this Victorian idea that sort of, everything sort of got shaped into this very innocuous, wholesome bedtime story thing, and that's really not where it's at all. There's a little bit of that, but it's just it should be appreciated on the same spectrum as individuals. Individuals are nice or they're negative as well. So that's sort of what you see if you look at the fairy folklore in its earliest form. You'll see that there's a lot more variation on the disposition and the appearance of these creatures than you realize.
And of course, it is a worldwide phenomena as well.
Yes, and that's the other thing I don't think a lot of people realize is that they think it's Germanic or it's Irish leprechauns, ha ha ha. But that's something that I even just in the narrow focus. I feel like I keep on plugging my book, but it's sort of even just in the narrow focus of the new book. I really I have an entire chapter dedicated just to looking at the one aspect of child abduction by fairies worldwide, and the consistency of that is just astounding. I mean, the jinn of the Middle East are pretty much a one-to-one comparison for fairies.
Yeah.
You'll find, as mentioned in the fairy census, Oceania, Australia and Papua New Guinea, also have some things that sound very strongly like the fairy folklore. South America, Asia, but surprisingly to a lot of people, North America is just replete with little people encounters, and they do a lot of the exact same things that the little people did, over in Europe. Now, is that saying again? Is that saying that we're dealing with a race of tiny people or something? No, I don't think that's it. But I think that there's some sort of objective truth that all these cultures are describing in some sense.
Okay. Any thoughts, Cherylee?
Well, yeah, I was going to say that it would probably surprise people that, like, coming from a military background where, I played in pipe bands, and a lot of the tunes, of course, are, reputably originated in from the fairies.
Really?
Yeah.
And the military has this strange connection, like tunes like Caber Fay, which is, it's basically this otherworldly stag creature, man thing that, it's a very powerful image that you find in military coats of arms, and it's, and has a tune as a pipe tune. It's kind of an important tune for military history here. So, having come through that tradition and learned those tunes and learn the history of the tunes, that there is this kind of otherworldly, mystical fairy presence in old military institutions. So it's not just little girls in fairy wings watching Tinkerbell.
It's so striking how many things, just in terms of day-to-day vocabulary, comes from fairy belief. I mean, the term stroke comes from the idea of the fairy stroke, that you would be touched or, assaulted by the fairies, and that's the reason that you'd be taken into this sort of not altered state, but altered existence that stroke victims would experience. The term when someone is spirited away, that's, the exact same idea. And I mean, I've been kicking myself a little while for not keeping a really long form analysis, a long form list of these different things that I noticed. But it's just, it's stuff like, for example, the color cobalt, while also derived from, an actual a mineral. The color of it was supposedly the same color of the kobolds, which were a type of fairy folk. I mean, so much of our language and so much of our interpretation of the way that we do things, the reason people knock on wood is because they're trying to appeal to elemental spirits. Some people say that the reason that you throw salt over your shoulder is to appeal to fairies. So a lot of our little day-to-day superstitions and quirks and words are really tied to this world, and it's so fascinating to me and sort of ironic that it's discounted and not really given a second thought nowadays.
See, I thought you threw the salt over your shoulder because the fairies had to count it because they're supposed to be kind of OCD. Yeah, they're supposed to be to an extreme amount, so that if you start counting, like if you toss pebbles and start counting them, they have to finish them, and that gives you time to get away.
Well, a couple different things. So
yeah.
some people have claimed that the salt over the shoulder superstition comes from the painting of the Last Supper, where Judas's elbow is actually tipping over the salt. So the idea that somehow you are warding off against the sin of Judas. That's obviously a Christianized version of it. Salt, of course, has a strong aspect in keeping fairies away in general. Possibly because it is something that sort of has preservative qualities. The way that you'd salt meat. But to your point, that's a very good point, and that's another variation that you do hear in a lot of cultures, are that denizens of the other world are obsessive about counting or enumerating things. You'll find in the American Southeast, slaves and their descendants from Africa used to put out colanders or brooms, or a bowl of rice to ward off the boo-hag, to ward off night terrors. And the idea was that when confronted with one of these things, they would be obsessed. They would be compelled to count every single one of these things. Similarly, there was a French fairy folk called the lutin, and you would do the same thing. You would put a bunch of peas in a jar, and the lutin would be coming to take your children, but it would have to stop and it would have to count all the peas before it could continue. And it's another one of those motifs. Sometimes in some folk tales, the devil, you can get out of a deal with the devil by demanding that he enumerate all the grains of sand on a beach or all the stars in the sky. Interestingly enough, there is a form of, I believe it's divination, a form of Chinese divination, where you actually draw sort of sigils, and the more complex the sigil, the idea is that evil spirits will get lost in the maze because they feel like they have to find every single corner. So you see that motif again.
That's like a dream catcher.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison too. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what that means or what that says about human beings, or about if there is an objective reality to some of these things. What that says about the other, but it's definitely a consistent feature.
Okay, let's move on to the article that I just saw posted today. NASA confesses to dosing Americans with airborne lithium and other chemicals. And I'm going to let Cherylee take this one.
Oh, because I thought it was a stupid article.
Yeah, but tell people why.
Okay, well, I only saw it really, really quickly, but the first thing that struck me was whoever wrote this article has no understanding of basic chemistry. Because when you're talking about lithium, well, the way the article has referred to lithium, when they're talking about, NASA sending up lithium, and they're talking about lithium thermite. Now, a lithium thermite is chemically used for things like rocket fuel. It's has nothing to do with drugs used to moderate a person's mood. Nothing whatsoever. And this article is basically saying that evil NASA is sending lithium up and dispersing it to affect all of our moods, when that's just silly. Lithium as a chemical, has a drug, it is completely different than a lithium thermite, which can be used for basically like rocket fuel or incendiary explosives, or to has a quick burning substance. It's just it would be like saying that carbon in pencils is the same as carbon in your body. It's just
they're two different things.
Yeah, I mean, there's carbon has an element, can be can form all kinds of different compounds and has various different uses, and they're not all. That doesn't make them the same. And this guy, whoever wrote the article, is basically confusing lithium salts, which are used, has a mood elevating drug or a mood affecting drug, and lithium thermite, which is used in used in rocket fuel and things like that. Yeah.
And what did it say in the article? I don't remember if it said why NASA said they were spraying it. The project is studying neutral and charged particles in the ionosphere and how each affects us the way other moves result. What? the ionosphere and how each affects the way the other moves, resulting in currents in the region. So they're spraying it to test. I guess it's for interference and satellites and things like that. This is they're trying to eliminate.
Okay, so it sounds like, I mean, I would have to see NASA's full statement to understand what NASA's doing up there. Mm-hmm, but it looks like they're just using this as basically like setting up fireworks so you can see which way the wind is blowing, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like you're basically just setting up something that like putting, dye in water so you can see how things are moving.
Right. And I mean, and that brings us to the whole concept of chemtrails and stuff, because that's kind of what people were so excited about this article. Oh, look, NASA's admitting the chemtrails and stuff like that. And like, I have no doubt that they are spraying things in the atmosphere, but I suspect that the things they're spraying in the atmosphere are probably more related to weather control and weather manipulation than anything to do with harming us in any way. And I think, Cherylee, you had made the comment, if they really wanted to hurt us, they could do it a lot easier than putting stuff in the atmosphere.
Yeah, go for a water supply. Oh.
Right. And of course, that's the whole fluoride in the water idea too. But I mean, from what I understand from the fluoride in the water, the most likely reason there's fluoride in the water is because it was a waste product they needed to get rid of.
What?
And and I think, is it the U.S. the only one that puts fluoride in the water?
No, Canada does too.
Canada does too.
And I can tell you, when I've lived in places where there's fluoride in the water, I have much healthier teeth.
Really?
Yes.
So you don't buy the idea that fluoride encrusts your pineal gland? And have you heard that before?
I have.
I've heard a lot of different things, and my personal feeling is that, I would rather have teeth.
But you don't need fluoride in the water to have good teeth. I mean, where I am, upstate in New York, there's no fluoride in the water. We get it directly from the groundwater.
Yeah, I grew up on well water, and I had my first, I needed my first filling ever when I was like 27. So
yeah.
It depends on how prone you are to these things. I do know, like, I've lived in places with and without it, and I didn't have cavities until I moved into a place where I was drinking well water and not getting any fluoride. And that suddenly I developed, my first cavities in my 20s. And
but that's not unusual anyway, developing cavities in your 20s.
No, but then when I moved back to the city and had water that was treated again, the cavity stopped. And then I moved again and they started up again. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm too much, into the science thing, but maybe I'm too trusting of that. But I tend to think that, I know there are some side effects. If you get too much fluoride, it's not good for you. And I know it does cause stomach irritation. And
well, that's why you're not supposed to swallow your toothpaste,
That's right. Yeah.
Although it's in a much more diluted quality in city water.
Yeah.
So, and I know there was studies done that's saying that young children shouldn't be drinking fluoridated water.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how. I haven't seen anything to that effect. I know countries that don't. Like, I know what the UK doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Fluorate the water.
Are we gonna? And as we're on the topic of teeth,
what are you saying, Josh?
I'm just saying that there's a stereotype there. That's all I'm saying.
There was just a state, and I'm trying to figure out which one it is here. There is a state in the U.S. I just saw a thing about saying that they are blocking fluoride in their water, but I can't find the article now.
Yeah. Well, and quite honestly, if we'd all stop eating sugar.
And you know what they say about Americans, fat Americans. All I'm saying is there's a stereotype there. So
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's really the sugar. It's funny. I was at a historic site a couple of years ago with my husband, and they had they were excavating bodies, and from a few hundred years ago, some of the earliest European settlements in Canada, and they were explaining how you could tell what the status of the person was by the status of their teeth, because if you were too poor to afford sugar, your teeth were spotless and perfect, and if you were wealthy enough to afford sugar, you had horrible teeth.
That sounds about right. I remember reading a while back about there being fewer cavities in Neanderthal than there were in modern day teeth, and I remember thinking that was really wild. But then I was like, you know what, that makes sense. It's funny how our bodies were designed to do certain things, and the farther we go away from that natural world, the more problems we end up having.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that as long as what you're eating is is naturally sourced and isn't overly processed, you can get away with eating a lot of quote unquote bad things.
Yeah.
And everyone's body handles it different too.
Yes, that's true too.
I know people who can eat literally anything they want and they can't gain weight even when they're trying.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I know. It's our family's just gone. Everyone in our house is now on a diet because, my husband just got diagnosed with sort of borderline type 2 diabetes, and so
you want to nip it in a bud sooner rather than later.
That's right. Even our poor dog got put on a diet by his vet this week.
What diet, if I don't mind asking? If you don't mind me asking.
What, the dog or my husband?
Your husband.
Well, he's just been told to cut out the refined sugars.
Yeah.
And he's kind of at the point where, he's very borderline. So if he eats properly, he shouldn't need medication for this. But if he continues eating the way he's eating, where he has, a lot of refined sugars, then he'll probably have to start taking medication.
Does he have a real sweet tooth?
Yes, he does. Yeah. It's hard for him, I know. I'm not so much because I grew up with diabetes in the family, so I didn't go that route. But.
So yeah, I mean, when it comes to things like chemtrails and stuff, I don't. It's one of those big conspiracy things, but I have yet to see any good reason why they would be putting stuff in the air. Like you said, they could put it in the water supply much easier than they could put it in the air, and it seems like the more likely suspicion would be for weather modification, because that's why you dump stuff in the atmosphere, is to control the weather.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of an open and shut thing about the fact that there have been tons of studies into weather modification, and it's something that actually does get implemented from time to time, if memory serves. So yeah,
they've admitted that they do. I mean, it's not one of those things that they haven't said. We don't do this. They do it.
Do they? I don't know. I've never really looked into the whole chemtrails thing. I just thought it was one of those weird conspiracy things that I hadn't,
There are definitely things where it's really just, people don't seem to understand how that stuff works. So if they see a plane spraying anything, they're thinking, it's chemtrails. And that's not the case. But there are definitely some weird shots that people have recorded of things, planes spraying stuff in the air that shouldn't be. And it's a little, it's like, okay, there's definitely something going on there, but it doesn't really tell us what. And my best guess, as I said, is weather modification.
Yeah, I'm sort of open to I'm I have a soft spot for this sort of thing. I am open to more nefarious things, but I don't honestly think that's what's happening the bulk of the time.
That's because you both are Americans and you're less trusting of your government.
Well, I think there's a reason for that. Our government has a record of doing some pretty horrible things to the general public.
Yeah, our government has a history of letting you do those things to some of us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just American citizens, it's citizens in other places as well.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I know all governments have their secrets. All governments do things that would upset us if we knew better.
Sure. I think the American... Go on.
I was just going to say, I don't think that the Canadian government is all that innocent at times either.
Sure, but the American government, I think, is especially good at maybe doing nefarious things here and there.
Well, they have more money to put into it.
Yeah, well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
And it's just become sort of part of the whole culture. It's just what we do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, I think it's the money that, as long as the money is there.
Yeah. And as long as they can bring in, new ways to build money. That's the thing. I mean, people are afraid, they're trying to wipe out the population, but they want the money, they want the labor, they want, I don't think it's really in their, to their advantage to wipe out the population. No, I think they want to control it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you need minions, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, let's go on to fasting. Now, this is one of the ones we talked about last week, and Josh was going, and he had all this stuff to say about it, and then I realized it wasn't recording.
Well, yeah. Speaking of weight loss and diets, my wife and I, probably for about a month now, have taken up intermittent fasting. I've heard a lot of great things about it. In controlled peer-reviewed studies, it seems to have a positive effect on blood glucose levels, and in terms of managing insulin. It appears to have a positive effect on the metabolism. There are a couple different ways you can do it. I'm sort of involved in a Facebook thread with some friends of mine who have some alternate suggestions of some things I can do. But generally speaking, the most achievable, sustainable version that I've seen is what's called the 5-2 fast, where you, for 2 non-consecutive days during your week, you consume 600 calories or less. Now, what some people do is, they will actually make sure that they fast up to 19 hours. I have had some friends tell me that, 19 hours from their last meal until they have their first small meal on their fasting day, or until they eat their first snack or whatever on their fasting day. That 19-hour window actually helps encourage, from what I understand, a ketogenic state where you're actually burning you're actually burning fat for a change. I have not been doing that. I have just been making sure that I have, I'll have 4 snacks, each equaling about 45 calories throughout the day, and then around 7 or 8 p.m. I'll have my salad with some chicken on it, and then the next day I'm back to not binge eating, but just eating regularly. So really not having to be restrictive about anything. My thing that I was excited about this is that I remember I was talking to you, Soraya, about going back on a diet. And you said, what you need to do is you need to find a lifestyle change, and that's where you can stick with it. And every diet that I've been on, it's been like, oh God, I can't wait to get rid of this thing. I can't wait to not be on this diet. And this, I can see myself doing,
indefinitely.
Indefinitely, yeah, exactly. So I've lost probably between 15 to 18 pounds in a month, which I know some people are like, that's too fast to lose weight. But don't worry, folks. I'm a real big guy. And whenever big guys start to do anything moderately diet related, it tends to melt off. So I'm working out and I'm still making sure, 600 calories a day is not a starvation diet.
No.
And a lot of the research out there suggests that people have more success with this than with calorie counting every day, because this way you just get to sort of relax the other days of the week, and you can have a social life, and you can go out and go out to dinner with folks. So I'm really enjoying it, and I would recommend if anybody is interested in it to look into it, and obviously consult your physician and make sure that you don't have any existing conditions that might preclude engaging in this. But I've had some really good success with it myself. Tons more energy too. That's what I was really surprised about. I have the most energy I've had in a long time. Which, if you have more energy, you can work out more and you can live life more.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, people go on diets, they lose weight, and they're like, "Great, now I'm going to go back to eating the way I was," and then they gain back the weight. They're like, "Why did it come back?" And it's not a matter of good diets. Is in a short period. It's literally a matter of lifestyle change. You have to change how you eat permanently, and what you do permanently. So if you're trying to do something that's extreme that you can't maintain, you're hurting yourself. And you're also creating sort of a rubber band sort of situation where you gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight. And every time you do that, it becomes a little harder to lose the weight.
Right. Right, exactly. And that's something that, a lot of big people like me have dealt with. But what I was on before that I had really great success with was actually the polar opposite of this. It was called the fast metabolism diet. And it's this idea that you could you eat basically mostly fruits and sprouted grain your first 2 days of Monday and Tuesday. Then Wednesday and Thursday you have just proteins and vegetables, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday you incorporate healthy fats. But you're eating like every 2 hours. Yeah, which I've heard a lot of people suggest that you really need to make sure that you snack to keep your metabolism going. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I mean, I had really good results with that diet, but again, that's not sustainable for me because there were a lot of other things that you could not drink at all. Like the only thing or drink or eat, like you could only drink water. That was it. Like no caffeine, no anything, just water. And there were certain things that were always going to be, hands off. So that was not the one for me. And I don't have a sweet tooth, so I'm a cheese and salt kind of guy. So this seems to be good for me. So that's your update on the where did my waistline go podcast.
And this came from and we started talking about this last time because of this article that says study finds that fasting for 72 hours can regenerate the entire immune system. And it seems to be from limited studies that they've looked at, it can, fascinating discovery, once again bringing out the debate on the forefront. The team gathered a group of participants and asked them in the initial stages to fast for 2 to 4 days on a regular basis over a 6-month period. During this time, they witnessed some incredible changes. The participants saw a noticeable decrease in the production of the enzyme pKa, a hormone which has been associated with an increased risk of cancer and tumor growth. Furthermore, the immune system of the participants appeared to go get a complete overhaul. The findings may provide considerable promise for those that are susceptible to disease, currently receiving chemotherapy treatments, or simply for our aging population. The research showed that the act of fast triggering a switch to flip in the body, signaling it to begin a stem cell-based regeneration of the Cherylee.
I don't know. I haven't got the article in front of me.
I'm dropping this one in the conversation here, and you can pronounce it.
Oh, hang on.
There you go.
Hematopic? I only saw it for a second there. Hey, where did it go?
No, I don't think it's hematopic. Maybe.
Sorry. Hang on.
It's a lot of vowels for hematopic.
I know.
Maybe.
I have it. My Skype is different this week because I'm on a different computer and I'm not getting. I saw the word briefly and then it disappeared.
We'll go with that then.
I don't know.
Regeneration.
I'm sure I'm wrong.
Regeneration of that system. It forced the body to use up its stores of glucose, fat, and ketones, and also started to break down a large number of white blood vessels, or cells, not vessels. The loss of white blood cells flagged the body to, in turn, regenerate new immune system cells. Now, the thing about this is very, very dangerous if you're a diabetic. And the reason is, the key there is it starts to break down, glucose, stores of glucose, fat, and ketones. And as a diabetic, your body has no defense in order to replace those. So, for instance, being a type 1 diabetic as I am, if I don't eat, my blood sugars will start skyrocketing faster than if I eat, 10 candy bars. It'll just go straight up because your body is breaking down these fat cells, and with all this glucose in it, it's just pure glucose, and it just skyrockets. The funny thing is I used to be able to fast and not have that happen, and then suddenly it started happening, and I was like, what is going on? Why are my blood sugars out of control? And I finally realized, I think I talked to a doctor, and they were like, well, yeah, because you're breaking down glucose in your system, and it's just skyrocketing everything.
So how do you feel if you don't eat now and you get that spike of high blood sugar? Like what symptoms do you have?
Oh, it feels horrible. High blood sugar is terrible.
Really?
It feels, you feel like you don't fit in your body. You just feel sick, tired. If your blood sugar is high regularly, you get used to it, which is how some people can have very high blood sugars all the time and not be bothered by it. But if you're normally in control and it goes high, yeah, you know it. It's a horrible feeling. I mean, low blood sugar is a little unnerving too, but it's not, to me at least, it's not as horrible. Usually because it's easier to catch and easier to bring up.
Right.
But it's weird. Like I said, I was able to fast at one point without that happening.
Interesting. I think it's interesting too that you've done some sort of you have so many experiences in you've done some sort of magical stuff, and you're not able to fast. And it's interesting to me because one of the places that I first heard about this was in Gordon White's Pieces of Hate, where he really recommends it. Not only he doesn't recommend it for health reasons because that's obviously dicey territory, but he says that it's actually a useful tool in magical practice in terms of sort of focusing and which makes sense. It's a cornerstone. It's a pillar of a lot of spiritual practices to fast. So it's interesting.
But it's not the only thing that you can do either. So, but that is actually why I tried fasting, is for the more magical response of it.
Now, was that, I remember there was something else that you didn't have any trouble with until people told you that you should have trouble with, related to diabetes too, right?
That's happened before, yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that there's that parallel to it with this too as well.
Well, that I didn't know what was going on with the fasting. With the fasting, it just kind of happened. And like I said, I would do it where I would literally not eat for a day or two and I'd be fine. And then I think it was actually when I was trying to lose weight and I was eating a very restricted calorie diet that started happening, where I would suddenly, I was eating a little bit, but I wasn't eating that much, maybe 800 calories a day. And that's when I was getting really hungry. And when I'd get really hungry, suddenly I'd be like, whoa, what's going on? Why do I feel like this? And it was because my blood sugar was skyrocketing.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So it wasn't the complete fast that was doing it, but the partial fast that was doing it. So yeah, it's not something I'm likely to try.
Don't try it. Don't try it. Not worth it.
But I have found over the years that my brain really does have such a strong connection to my body. I had, it's one of those things. I'm one of those people where if you say, oh, this is something that could happen to you, if you're not careful, my body starts going like this. It's like, no, stop,
Please, no.
And I used to be a pretty heavy hypochondriac, and I'm not anymore. But every once in a while, something like that'll happen, and it shows you just how strong of an effect your mind over matter really is when it comes to your own body.
It's like reading WebMD and you're convinced that you have everything that's on WebMD. Oh, I have done that many a time.
That I've never done, but I believe you have.
Yeah. You think? Yeah. No, I definitely have.
You remind me of my mom. My mom figures that it's the worst thing you can do is go to a doctor because they'll tell you you're sick and you'll believe it. So as long as you don't go, you'll be healthy and fine.
Yes. Yeah. My parents always had that idea too. When my dad got diagnosed with cancer, the thing that told us he had this was the fact that he had jaundice. So, my mother had said, come take a look at your father. Does he look yellow to you? And he was yellow. And I was like, oh yeah, he has jaundice. He needs to go to the hospital. And my parents were always like, well, we'll just wait and see how it is tomorrow. And I'm like, you're not waiting till tomorrow. You're going to the hospital.
Not with jaundice, you're not, no.
No.
And they're like, oh, okay. And then at some point later, part of me wants to believe he was just joking, but he was always like, no, if you didn't make me go to the hospital, I wouldn't have had to deal with all this stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, you'd be dead.
Yeah, no, I know. It's funny because my mom won't go to the doctor, but heaven forbid if her cat got jaundice, it would be to the vet in a second.
Well, that's her cat. That's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the other article we pulled? There was this interesting article, and I haven't had a chance to go completely over it, but it was in the Phoenix New Times, where they have released UFO reports from, or the FFA. Here, American Airlines pilot discuss UFO sighting over Arizona in FAA tape. And it's basically something flew right by their plane. Was the conversation goes, was anyone above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago? A Phoenix Air Group pilot flying a Learjet at 37,000 feet asked an air traffic controller at 3:30 on February 24th. They say negative. He says, okay, well, something did. A few minutes later, the American airline pilot reported seeing the same thing at roughly 40,000 feet over the Sonoran Desert between Pocono and Mammoth. No one knew what it was. And so it goes on, and this is not unusual. I mean, we know pilots see this stuff. The problem I see with this stuff nowadays is that could have been something anomalous, or it could have just been some test craft that our government was flying around, and there's really no way for us to ever know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the part that was interesting to me was that they told another pilot to look up and tell them if anything went over top of him, because they weren't seeing it on the radar. But they're saying, well, other people have reported this and it's coming your direction. Is there anything there? And he looked up and yep, there it goes.
So it's basically like, yes, there's something there, but it doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people jump to the conclusion of, oh, look, that's further proof of aliens in our, airspace and stuff like that. And it's just not. It's proof that they saw something. I have no doubt they saw something.
Yeah.
But what they saw is completely open to question.
Well, yeah. I mean, it goes back to something we talked about the last time I did this, where, what technology isn't always made available as soon as it's available. It's not made known. So yeah, it could be a decade before we realize that, oh yeah, this is what kind of craft that was.
Right, exactly. And I mean, we probably never will know, because even if they released it, there's not enough data there for us to match it up.
Yeah.
I just did. You guys haven't heard it yet, but I just talked to Robert Guffey, which by the time this airs, at least one part of that conversation will go up. And, he talks about all that stuff that the government, that his friend was being harassed with, technology his friend was being harassed with, that it looked like they were pretty much on the verge of perfecting, that doesn't, like 10 years later, they're just kind of rolling out minor versions of it to the public, and he's able to go, okay, so this stuff does exist. The exact descriptions that this guy was telling him, it really does exist. And if they're showing this to the public now, how much further advanced are they?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I've come to the realization that a long time ago that whatever the answer to the UFO question is comprised of a lot of different facets.
Yeah.
But I think that a not insignificant proportion are A, simple misidentification, because let's be realistic, and B, unorthodox aircraft. Again, folks, not saying that there's not something weird about it, because I wouldn't be on this program if I didn't think there was something weird about a lot of these things. But I think that unorthodox aircraft play a pretty significant, sizable role in a lot of these sightings.
And this is why Valet thought it was so important to look at the sightings pre-1900s.
Right, exactly. With his Wonders in the Sky with Chris Albeck. That's
yeah, exactly. And it's because those, we know they're not technology. And if they are technology, that's still really interesting because whose technology are they?
Yeah.
If there was some hidden group on this planet running, flying technology, that's pretty interesting. There was this article that popped up. What scientists found trapped in a diamond, a type of ice not known on Earth? Either of you see this one? Came out in the Los Angeles Times.
I did not see that.
No.
They're calling it Ice-VII. And they're saying it's loading ads, so now I can't find the thing. Ice-VII is about 1.5 times as dense as regular ice that we put in our drinks. And the crystalline structure of the atoms is different as well. You okay there, Cherylee?
Yeah, I'm just having a bit of computer trouble. Are we still okay? There we go.
Everything good?
Yeah, it's coming back now. That was really scary.
What happened?
It just started. My screen was flickering, and there we go. Okay, I'm still here.
You're still there. It's just making a lot of noise, like scuffling.
Yeah, no, it's just my screen was just disappearing, and it wasn't responding to like the touch screen.
Oh, okay.
So I had to put it on the base so that I could use the mouse to try and bring it back. So yeah, it seems to be working for me now. For a while there, it was just like nothing was responding.
Huh. Okay. In normal ice, known as Ice-VII, I didn't know that what we had is called Ice-VI. The oxygen atoms arrange themselves in a hexagonal shape. In these Ice-VII, these atoms are arranged in a cubic shape. So it's kind of okay. So if you press down hard enough on Ice-I, it'll transform into Ice-II, which has a rhombus structure, let's say, because I can't.
Rhombohedral.
Thank you. Increase the pressure once again, the atoms will rearrange themselves into Ice-III, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. Unlike the other phases of ice, however, Ice-VII remains fairly stable even as the pressure increases. Scientists believe that Ice-VII may be found in great abundance in the solar system, perhaps on the interior moons like Enceladus and Europa, or as part of the ocean floor of Titan. But they did not think it could occur naturally on Earth. The pressure Ice-VII requires to form can be found on our planet, but they only exist deep in the mantle where the temperature is too warm for this form of ice to be stable. Previous work has shown that Ice-VII can be synthesized in a lab, but the new study revealed that small amounts of the material can also form naturally here on Earth thanks to the peculiar properties of diamonds. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So they're basically talking about polymorphs, which is things with the same composition, but that form different crystalline structures due to the environment they're crystallized in. So it's like the difference between graphite and diamonds, where graphite is actually the stable form of a mineral made entirely of carbon at the Earth's surface. Diamonds, even though the advertisements like to tell you that diamonds are forever, they're actually metastable at Earth surface conditions. So diamonds are very, very slowly turning into graphite.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I learned about that and about the different ice classifications tonight. It's been an educational experience for me.
Well, that's how they tell when, like, if they're looking for meteor sites on the Earth's surface, so that they can tell the difference between, say, a meteor crater and a volcanic crater, is that they'll look for certain minerals that form. If it's a meteor, it would be like a high impact, low temperature type of event, generally speaking. But like if it's volcanic, then it's not got the same kind of pressure, so it forms different things out of the same material.
Okay.
Yeah. So like quartz, which is a really common mineral, there's a lot of different polymorphs that are associated with meteor craters that they look for if they're trying to, figure out how a particular crater might have been formed.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what the article is about. Basically, it's just saying that this type of ice wouldn't be stable under normal Earth conditions. But it would be at other places.
And we're very lucky it's not Ice-VII.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know what Ice-VII is, it's a fictional material that Kat Vonnegut's that he put in Cat's Cradle, where it had a freezing temperature of 48.9 degrees Celsius. And when it spreads into the rest of in the novel, it spreads into the rest of the ocean, and the entire ocean freezes at, warm temperatures. What's 48 degrees Celsius for?
48 degrees Celsius is very similar to 48 degrees Fahrenheit, because the two scales cross at around minus 40.
Oh, okay.
So once you get to minus 40, there's not a lot of difference between the two scales.
But 48 degrees Celsius?
So minus
48 degrees.
Is it minus 40?
No, 48 degrees.
48 above.
Yeah, 48 degrees Celsius is super hot, right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you said minus 40.
It's like
so
120 or something,
40.
right?
Yep, the freezing temperature of water becomes 118.4 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So hence all the water in the planet freezes and everything goes to hell. It's a great novel if you haven't read it.
Okay, that would be, yeah.
And it's something that, someone creates in a lab, and then it just kind of, after a series of misadventures, basically, it ends up getting exposed to the normal water supply of the planet, and then everything goes down.
Oh, dear. Okay, yeah. No, you had me confused with freezing, because I thought, why would it freeze at plus 40?
Okay, yeah.
So I was thinking minus 40, which, yeah, I know. In the winter times here, when people ask me to explain what minus 40 is like, I just say, well, it's the same as minus 40 where you are.
It's cold. That's what you need to know. It's really, really cold.
Yeah, it's cold.
Especially if it's negative 40 plus wind chill.
Oh yeah, I know. I know that one of the last winters I lived in the Canadian prairies, it was below minus 40 for 2 weeks straight. Yeah, and all the plastic in my car cracked.
Wow. I remember you telling me about that. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, I've heard some cold stories from when I was in Wisconsin, but nothing that cold, that's for sure.
Well, do cars, like, I know, like in Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Alberta, cars, when you buy them, come with a block heater. I'm not sure if they do in Wisconsin.
You can get them on a lot of cars. Actually, they'll have a block that you can plug into an outlet.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying it in some Canadian provinces that's standard when you buy a car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard some stories about some friends of mine who were instrument repair techs who actually went out to the car one day to turn their ignition. And as they put the key in and actually turn the key broke off in the ignition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. No, I know when we lived in Colorado and I took my car in for servicing, they were confused as to what, thought it was like a weird hybrid because it had a plug.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for a while there, I just felt like saying, "Oh yes, it is an exotic hybrid.
Yeah.
It's an exotic Canadian hybrid car."
Exactly.
But some of the hybrids actually plug in also to keep the engine. Was it a hybrid? No, maybe it wasn't a hybrid. I have a customer who had one that she had plugged in, but I guess maybe it was diesel fueled.
Oh yeah.
I guess it was diesel fueled, and because the diesel fuel has a hard time starting.
Yeah, they have to have the block
in cold
heater.
temperatures. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. There was a video I posted to the Where the Road Go Facebook page, which is free for anyone to join if they want. And it's about a Queensland farmer who found 6 cows lying dead in his paddock, all in a straight line with no marks on them. And it definitely looks weird. They're all kind of touching not the electric fence, but the barbed wire fence, which makes me think that, maybe it got struck by lightning or something. But you would think you would see burn marks on the cows.
Or burn marks somewhere. I mean, I can't imagine,
a
lightning strike hitting the wire and not leaving some sort of scorching on the earth. And
if you've ever seen someone who survived getting hit by lightning, or even just gets hit by lightning, it leaves pretty distinctive patterns, and there's no marks on these cattle.
I would like to know how long these cattle have been dead there, because some of them seem pretty bloaty.
Yes, they're very bloated.
Which obviously doesn't look like it happened the night before. I'm not an expert on cattle decomposition, but they don't look like they've been dead for less than 24 hours. They look like they've been out there for a little while.
Yeah, well, if his thing is big enough, he may not have even noticed they were missing for a while.
Well, that's the other thing too. Yeah, some of these ranches. Well, in the U.S. we have some pretty big ranches too, but especially in Australia, I mean, it's crazy. It's the size.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's definitely a strange video. Let's see what else was there. There was another article here. Cherylee, did you look at the tiny crystals that could unlock psychic powers?
I did not.
Unfortunately, I think is it a video? I think it's a video. I can't really read from it. I don't think there's much to it. I posted it because, when I clicked on it, it didn't go anywhere. Okay, I think it's from Gaia. It is. It's from Gaia, so I'm going to say it's probably nonsense.
Yeah.
Womp womp.
Oh.
However, there is a book called Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions, and one of the things he talks about are basically these little magnetic crystals we have in our system and in our brain. And I think he talks about certain animals have these things that help them tune into north, and that's how they navigate.
Yeah, pigeons.
Yeah, pigeons, but I think certain other animals have them too. And he had a little bit of speculation in there about what this could be doing in our brain if we're just not connected to it, or if it could be utilized in other ways that we're not aware of. It says, according to this, it says Persinger has theorized that those crystals can be part of telepathy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think actually I might have read that one with Michael Persinger's comments on I wish I had that in front of me, because I that's starting to ring a few bells now. I know that there's a book called if I didn't have a dog on top of me and I could turn around and see on the bookshelf.
I'm having some trouble figuring out. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's The Electric Connection by Michael Chalice. It's a book by a physicist in the UK who talked about electrical sensitivity and the connection to people who are psychic and people who have allergies and psychic functioning.
Really?
Like it was sort of those three things. He looked at people that had various allergic conditions, like fairly serious ones, particularly environmental sensitivity, and then issues with sensitivity to electrical, like being around electronics and Wi-Fi and stuff made them sick. And these same people all seem to have psychic experiences. And I seem to recall that some of the stuff with Persinger kind of related it to the same things that author was finding in terms of the physiology of people who had these kind of experiences. And one of the really interesting thing was that people who had those experiences all had a craving to go farther north. Like they preferred being north, as like being as far north as they could be was better for them. And I feel that way. My whole family lives like way up north. I only live as far south as I do because of my husband's job. My whole family is just way far north. And
and you have plenty of electrosensitivity.
Yeah, and and it's funny, like there's just I know a lot of people like that feel better when they're there, and maybe it has something to do with the same kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely could.
And it's not just a craving for the Northern Lights, which I do miss.
So I miss the connection between sort of a magnetic navigation system internally, that mechanism, and telepathy. How is that?
Oh, he was saying that well, at least the article was saying, he said that it had those crystals, those magnetic crystals, may have some connection to how telepathy works.
Keeping in mind that Persinger is looking for a materialistic, physical explanation for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was. That's part of the reason that I was wondering. I think that he's done some really great work, honestly.
Oh yeah.
But it seems like a little bit of a loss. So I think what he probably is getting at is the illusion of telepathy, right? That accounts for the illusion of telepathy, or
no? He's looking for the physiology of telepathy, and I mean that was like when I went to his lab to be tested. They were looking at how my brain might be different than the brain of somebody who, in my case, they were looking at PK experiences, right? Psychokinesis. And or at least Bill Roll, had a model of how he thought the brain of somebody who had those experiences should look.
Interesting.
And apparently mine does. Mine fit his model, and it was. So they do have ideas on how or what kinds of people are likely to have these experiences based on the physiology.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. And I know that it kind of, like I know that it rubs people the wrong way because it is a materialistic, philosophically materialistic take on everything. But that doesn't mean that there isn't, I mean, the approach has its
merits.
Yeah, merits. That his work certainly has been useful, and in some ways it's just particularly the way scientific work is done. It fits into that a lot more easily and a lot more legitimately. Than just meditating with our Gaia crystals would.
Yeah, fair enough.
And even something like that, like I'm not going to say it does or doesn't work. Obviously, it works for some people, but I wonder if part of the reason that things like that work is because of belief. You believe it works, so there you go, it's going to work.
Well,
again, a sort of a mind over matter sort of way.
Well, and that even goes for why it worked in Persinger's lab the way that the scientists were hoping would. There is something called, the experimenter effect, and experiments tend to work out the way, and the people doing the experiments are hoping. So yeah, there's some, that effect's been shown to.
Yep.
It's not a made up thing, and I think it gets ignored a lot because it has really complicated, consequences. If it's, if that's how things are, they're a lot more messy There's a lot more going on in the lab than we really want to pay attention to.
Well, and it really throws a spanner in the scientific method in a lot of ways too.
Oh yeah, it does.
Because everything has to be replicable with anyone in a lab,
Yeah. And maybe it's only replicable when enough people believe it is.
Yeah. That is certainly a possibility.
Something we sort of talked about last time we got together. Soraya was sort of Ren's and my idea that we sort of got into, which was the idea that perhaps there's some sort of Rupert Sheldrake like morphic threshold that has to be met in terms of people believing in things for them to actually manifest in a consistent way in a lab.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think I think reality is nowhere near as materialistically structured as even we tend to think it is by the way we react with it. So I think there is a definite flux that happens, especially the further down you get to more subtle things, the more things are liable to flux back and forth. And I think until we understand how that works, on how much of an effect we have on the reality around us, we're not going to be able to kind of get to the bottom of some of this stuff.
Yes. what you said.
Which wasn't particularly eloquent, but I guess I got the point across.
No, you definitely. That's a good way of looking at it.
And that includes UFOs and everything else. I mean, this stuff is so, as Greg Bishop likes to say, there's this whole co-creation element. But I think that's the nature of reality, that it's co-created around all of us.
I mean, yeah, the idea that consensus reality might actually be an actual consensus,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
as opposed to just a convenient metaphor.
And what does that do to even the scientific method after a point? It's only valuable up to a point.
Yeah.
If we throw something off a building, we know we can map that it's going to fall to the ground. On a scale like that, it works. But when you start getting into these more subtle things, it just starts breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, and then you have these sort of exceptions to the rules where things happen that are totally bizarre and they seem to be associated with certain people. Like I was thinking about, I'm trying to remember the guy's name who's done some scientific experiments. I think he's out on the Vancouver, BC area, with kind of levitation devices. Weird. And
mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the guy's name now. And apparently the equipment he has only works when he's around it.
Huh.
Like no one's been able to replicate it. And he produces these phenomenal effects and they seem to be genuine, but it only works when he's there. And there's been different types of things like that throughout history. Some of the kind of telephones to talk to the dead type of things where where they only seem to work when there's mediums in the room. And
which of course opens the door. Everybody says, "Oh, it must be chicanery." It must be a hoax. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, and I know like right now there's a number of groups that are sort of supposedly trying to build technology to allow spirit communication. And I know in the one group, they have a lot of mediums there, but they aren't really admitting that it's probably the mediums that are facilitating the effects they're getting. You
have those people who have taken like photographs, and they take the photographs and there's writing and stuff on them. Yeah. And they've done them with, Polaroid cameras where it's near impossible to fake, if not outright impossible to fake. But it only works when they do it. And of course the initial thing is, they're faking it, or more likely to me, that it's them creating it in some way unconsciously.
Yeah. Well, the whole skull, are you familiar with, the skull experiment?
Yes, but remind me what it is and tell everyone else what it is too.
Okay, well, I mean, it was basically a a medium circle, and it was one where they had invited members of the psychical researchers in to investigate. So they were very open to the idea of investigation, and it took them quite a while. It was basically they met on a regular basis over a period of time, and eventually they started getting some phenomenal results. And they were quite happy to have researchers come in and look at it. And they had things like apports and materializations, and it was all really interesting. And then they stopped it because I don't know if you ever heard towards the end where they stopped it, because apparently now they're saying it was people from the future were trying to cause trouble in this time frame.
Really?
Yeah, and there was aliens. Like, it all went really bizarre. It started off as kind of a traditional mediumistic circle where they get together and do seances, and they were getting the traditional effects that one gets at these events. And then suddenly there were aliens. And then they shut everything down for a number of years, and apparently now they've started them up again.
Interesting.
I
think someone had actually requested we do a roundtable on that, and I was like, oh yeah, and I kind of looked it up and went, right, that's what this is. That would make a good roundtable, and that was as far as I got with it.
It's a really complicated story. Like, if you look at the proceedings, is a thick book. I mean, there were three or four main researchers that looked into it, and I don't think any of them are still alive at this point. Although a few people, like Rupert Sheldrake, had attended some of the seances, and he's still around.
Right.
But yeah, and I think if you go to YouTube, you can usually find it has the afterlife experiments, which it's not a bad depiction of some of it. I mean, it doesn't get heavily into the science, but it gives you an idea of what was going on. Yeah, it's an interesting story. But it was just that it ended very, very abruptly. And you look at some of the photographs and you can see what looks like a gray alien.
Really?
Yeah. And that was where everything just was abruptly halted. And now they're talking about they've gotten the okay to go back into it, and it had to do with time travelers, and it's very
strange.
Yeah, highly strange.
But, and that makes me feel like, again, that's something that's probably being influenced by the people involved. And the stranger it gets, the stranger their minds are going to wander and create something even stranger as they go.
That, yeah, like, it really, it's a very interesting story. I mean, it's a lot more convoluted than, say, the Philip experiment in Toronto, where, for people who don't know, basically a group got together, and instead of trying to contact ghosts, they just invented a ghost, just to see if they would still get effects. And they got, table levitations and knocks from the table. And basically their made-up ghost acted just like a real ghost for them and produced effects for them. And like, the group actually was covered in some of the local news, where they did these seances for the local news programs, where they'd get tables moving around, and it was quite impressive effects. And then everyone just kind of forgot it ever happened. It seems like,
Well, you get the skeptics who will say, "Oh, well, it was all fakery and all this other stuff, and that's why it stopped."
Yeah, I think that the Philip experiment might be one of the most important undertakings, obviously to paranormalia, but also just to science in general. I think the implications that arise out of that are huge. And I don't think that it gets nearly enough attention, both in the anomalous circles and also in the worldwide awareness as well.
Well, have you seen some of the new stuff done by Stephen Brody? Where he had kind of investigated groups. He got together some informal groups hoping to see if he would find like a talented medium among them. And he did. And he found that he didn't need the rest of the group, that we'll just get this guy to do table tipping for us. and they've kind of set it up where they can measure if the table gets lighter. Just to make a repeatable experimental effect. And I don't know how far they've gone with this, but like the initial results are pretty darn neat. That
that's cool.
That you don't really need, although you'll get big effects with a sitters group, if you find that one talented individual and just set things up and let him go for it, you can record something that can be measured. And which I think is funny because Brody is always into, like, he's against a lot of doing stuff in the lab. Let's go out and see sci in the wild kind of thing, and yet he's starting to bring it into the lab.
Interesting. Yeah, this is new to me.
Oh, I'll have to. I'll find the articles and I'll send.
Please share.
All right. Are there any other news things you guys can think of that you've heard in the last week or so?
I found the diabolically cackling Alexa to be an interesting.
Oh yeah,
interesting development. I'm a proud non-owner of any of those.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I know. My husband will let them in the house.
Yeah,
I'm afraid of what yours would say, Cherylee.
Oh Lord, yeah.
Well, I mean, to be honest, we're probably all. I mean, it's kind of an arbitrary to be alive in this day and age and draw that line in the sand. It's probably arbitrary because we're probably still giving away tons of stuff through our phones and our computers and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I feel like that makes it really easy for the powers that be to collect whatever they want to.
I love that little meme where it says, back in the 1950s, we were all afraid of government wiretapping and et cetera, and now we, buy it and go put it in our house, and you can see the little Alexa thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one that was one that I saw that was 1990. Don't talk to strangers on the internet and don't get in strangers' cars. And it said 2018. Summon a stranger from the internet to get in their car.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know if you've been watching the new X-Files? Yes, it was.
I'm way behind on it. I watched the first few.
Oh, okay, because it was 2 episodes ago where they had basically the AI taking over. And they start the episode by referring to the Alexa, or not, sorry, it wasn't the Alexa one, it was the Twitter Tay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The chat bot on Twitter that started,
getting very racist.
Yeah, and started, talking about how wonderful Hitler was. And
but that's because it was kind of programmed by the people interacting with it.
Yes, but the idea of the X-Files episode was that basically we're their example. We're teaching them. We're creating, there's artificial intelligence and we're mom and dad. And what they do is because of bad parenting skills on our part.
That's about accurate.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and you get a lot of people who like with that whole Twitter bot thing. I mean, it was people just messing around because they could.
Yeah.
But the AI doesn't know they're messing around, so it took them seriously. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to learn, so here we go.
Yeah. Although there have been other cases, they had the 2 Facebook AIs that developed their own language. Because there was no incentive for them to actually use English or any human language. So after a while, they just started developing their own language for their own, electronic species as such.
Yeah.
and so they could ignore us.
And I feel like the Alexa thing could be something that the people who made Alexa could have slipped in there. Or, they could have been hacked.
Like an Easter egg
Yeah.
Or it could be a programming error.
Yeah.
And they're going, well, this is getting us press. Let's leave it.
Well, you have to know that with those things in the house, eventually you'll start hearing, your dead aunt over them. Because because I don't know if have you ever had Cal Cooper on your show?
I have. That's exactly who I was just thinking of.
Yeah, and of course he took over from D. Scott Rogo, and who was mysteriously murdered years ago, and so and it seems like the more our technology evolves, the more ghosts or whatever it is seems to interact with us through that technology.
And that's the theme of the horror movie Pulse, if I remember right.
Oh, is it? I haven't seen that. I don't see those movies.
It was a Japanese horror movie that was redone as an American version, which actually wasn't that bad. I think the American version I kind of liked a little bit more. In the Japanese version, we start accessing frequencies that ghosts can come through in.
Oh.
But of course, being Japan, the ghosts were very sad, and they just wanted, and it's very sad and lonely, and if they got a hold of you, they killed you and made you sad and lonely with them. And so it was like, okay, that's depressing. And then the American version, though, was kind of like there was an intelligence behind it coming through on these frequencies. That they were using a new frequency for Wi-Fi or whatever, and something was coming through on it because now it had access to our reality.
Well, wasn't there a recent scientific paper that kind of said something like that the aliens will get us through our technology?
Oh, yeah. But that's more, yeah.
So Alexa is just first contact.
Again, if an advanced civilization wants to connect with us in a malicious way, they're not going to need to hack our technology.
No.
I'm sure they have. If they're actually a malicious race, I'm sure they're going to have plenty of ways of destroying us that we won't even see coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they've already done it.
Right. And we're in a simulation being run by, whatever.
Well, on that chipper note.
But I do think the Alexa thing is funny. And I was highly amused reading that. I'm thinking, okay, now I kind of want an Alexa just so it will laugh.
Yeah, I suspect that it's probably just an Easter egg or something that was hidden. But you can never tell.
It doesn't seem like something that's Alexa has come alive. I
don't think it's an emergent AI
behavior. Yeah.
No.
But I mean, it's definitely an odd little thing. And if it was around Halloween, I'd be like, oh yeah, now it's definitely a prank that they're putting on their users.
Yeah, that's true. If it had happened on April 1st, that'd have been a bit of a giveaway.
I mean, I do so much with technology, but some of it, like things like that, I don't see the point in it. Like, I don't sit here and go, man, I should get an Alexa. It's like, what am I going to do with that? I don't even like using the OK Google on my phone very much.
I don't use Siri often. I mean, well, most of the time, Siri never understands what I say, I asked about a question about black-eyed peas today, and she thought I was talking about black IPs, like an IP address. I'm like, no, not black IPs. Or black intellectual properties, I guess. But I hardly ever use Siri because she just isn't that good for me. So, heck with Siri.
I will use the OK Google on rare occasions, usually to look something up quick or to call somebody. But mine does this weird thing where I will say something. Like if I said, call Joshua Cutchin, and 90% of the time it would say, okay, calling Joshua Cutchin. But the other 10% it'll say, there is no number, or there is no, I find no entry for call me deceiver. And I'm like,
what?
It's like, what? And then I'll do it again, and it's like, there is no entry for call me deceiver. And I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah. See, I don't even have a smartphone, so. And I know
I don't know what call me deceiver is, but
it sounds sinister.
Doesn't it? It sounds like it's Satan or something. Yeah. No number for Satan. Well, why not?
That'd be a good.
Let's get on that.
There probably is a number.
That's a good setup for a short story. You ask to call somebody, and it calls a random number that actually is the Satan hotline.
You've reached the Satan hotline.
Well, there probably is one.
Probably.
I mean, what isn't there?
It's just yeah, and the whole music is Careless Whisper.
I don't know that song.
You do. You just don't know that you know it.
You think I do? I'll bet you I probably don't.
Okay.
You have no idea how hard I have tried to avoid pop music in my life.
I'm pretty sure you know Careless Whisper. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. So where did the road go first? We're gonna play Careless Whisper.
Did I mention I try to avoid pop music?
Here we go.
Okay, yeah, I know it. You're right. Fair enough.
Told you.
A lot of times, so that happens, and people say, oh yeah, you know this, and then it's like, nope, never heard this before in my life. And they're like, but it's on the radio all the time, and I'm like, right, and I never listen to the radio, so there you go.
Yeah, I never listen to the radio. Actually, my wife had to thought it was hilarious that I thought that Ryan Seacrest and Justin Timberlake were the same person.
Okay, I don't know
why.
I don't know what either of them are.
What a silly thing to think.
Yeah, I know, right? She was like, "Oh, that's funny. That's so funny." I'm like, "No, I really have no frame of reference."
I have no frame of reference either.
Neither do I. That's terrible. And my fault is that I was raised in a house with brothers, so clearly my musical tastes were skewed
heavier.
Yeah, different. Yeah, I know from listening. They had like Gatto and Rush. That was what I grew up with.
That's fine.
Although one of my brothers did have a thing for ABBA that he would listen to, and he thought nobody was home, and I think he had a thing for one of the blonde singer. It was like Dancing
funny.
Queen coming out of his bedroom.
Nice.
It could be worse. It could be so much worse than ABBA. When you look at some of the music out there, ABBA's pretty good by comparison.
Yeah, well, actually, when you look at compositionally, their work is actually quite good.
Yes. Yeah.
It was just how it was dressed in the silly costumes and the glitz that was a bit goofy. But,
right.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. I think we can bring this to a close. Hey, look, I've been recording this whole time.
Really?
Yay!
Oh my gosh! So all the stupid things I said are going to be out there.
Yes, all the stupid things.
I'll just explain to people that I'm really tired.
All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed it, and I thank you two for joining me. And Cherylee, when's your book coming out?
Oh, please don't do that to me. You're just getting even from me asking if you were recording.
Well, no, actually, I'm asking so you can tell people you don't actually know yet because people keep asking.
Yeah, people keep asking, and I have some really good help right now with it.
Yes, but it's going to be a little bit before it's out.
I think so.
Okay.
But yeah, because we're going to make sure it's done properly. I hope.
Good. And it was already really good, and you're refining it at that.
I hope so. I have to tell you that, having your book read by somebody who writes properly is so scary. Because I have a science degree.
Right.
And what's worse, it's like a degree in geology, and my husband, who came through biology, he tells me that geologists make up words, And we do. It's true.
Nice.
It's true. My master's thesis was full of made up words because, there's no word for this. I'll just say it's that. And off I go. I've created a word because it's a new thing.
Geology secrets here on the Last Exit for the Lost.
I know. Apparently biologists are, they have special words. They spell things correctly too.
How weird.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, geologists are just like one step away from engineering.
All right. And Josh, your book will be out when?
My book will be out at the end of the summer. No later than, I've been assured. So, here's hoping. I'm supposed to have my latest round of edits back to the publisher by April 1st, and I'd like to put out there as an invitation for anyone who happens to be in the area. I, along with definitely Red Pill Junkie, definitely Tim Banal, definitely Greg Bishop, some other ne'er-do-wells, and possibly Ren Collier. We will be at Paramania 2018, the official unconference of the punk rock UFO scene. That'll be in New Orleans on April 19th through the 22nd. Non-structured. We might be a couple of presentations, mostly just hanging, seeing the sights, and just talking about all these sort of things. This will be our third year of doing it. So if anybody's interested in details, just hit me up on Twitter or Facebook or something, or through my website, joshuacutchin.com, and we'll see if we can't invite you into the fold.
Nice. All right. Well, I thank both of you. It's been fun.
A pleasure as always.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm very tired. Please don't hold it against me.
So you took over for Josh this week.
Yeah. Usually that's my MO.
And a special thanks to our Patreons who are donating at the $10 or above level. Christopher Sheehan, Mark Brady, Allison Cook, Christopher Vaughn, Robert Groom, Chris Elmquist, Scott Morris Everett, Super Inframan, Patricia Giaquinta, Lauren Melton, John Eddy, Alfred Tuttle, Kevin Schreck, and Carla Mahoney. Thank you all so very much. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.